opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the individual guests. If you're a sensitive snowflake that may get easily offended, then turn this off immediately. If you want to hear the real truth about the gun culture, then stick around. This is the Armed Citizen Podcast. What is going on, my Go Squad? Welcome to the Armed Citizen Podcast Live. This is episode number 231. Today's date, it's an easy one. It's March 1st, 2022. Tomorrow is Every Second Matters. Just a quick shout out for all of you people out there that take part in the Every Second Matters movement. But we are live as always on YouTube and over on Facebook. If you're out there live in the discussion in the chat, say something. If you're out there, we don't know that you're out there unless you do. Throughout this podcast, if you have any questions for myself or our guests, go ahead and tag myself or any of us, and we'll try to get those questions answered. If you want to call or text in, yes, you can call and text into the show. Please utilize the Ghost Tactical Hotline presented by our good friends Rod and Shelly Gates at Aegis Gun Care. That phone number is 530-364-4678. It is right down below scrolling. If you are a veteran, really anyone, but especially if you're a veteran and you're in that hole and you're trying to dig your way out and you're questioning whether there's still light out there, please call me, contact me with email, text, phone, whatever, 24/7. I cannot give you any medical advice, but I sure as hell can probably be a pretty decent ear and maybe talk you through some stuff. If in fact you are looking to get some help towards some medical help, please remember two things. One, you are not alone in this fight. You have a lot of brothers and sisters out here that are able and willing to help. And two, the world is a much better place with you in it. So please, please, I implore you, utilize the Veteran Crisis Hotline, 1-800-273-8255. Once again, 1-800-273-8255. It is scrolling down below. The Veteran Crisis Hotline, and veterans press the number 1. We are, as always, spotlighting the United States Marine Corps. If you have any questions on what it takes to earn the title of United States Marine, see the website marines.com. And as always, we are a proud member of the Self-Defense Radio Network. Please check out all the awesome podcasts over on selfdefenseradio.net. Let me get this off of my ugly mug and open it up to our guests. We have guys who's obviously, he's always here. I even send him the wrong link sometimes, and the freaking dude still shows up somehow. But he is always riding shotgun with us. He is a tactical leprechaun from the great state of Texas. I think I'm his hype man by now. Is that a thing? Our hype man's still around, but I think I'm Clover's hype man. What's up, Holmes?
Yeah. Hey, man.
So being shotgun, what is your shotgun of the week?
Man, you'll dig this one.
Oh, I will.
I chose it especially for you because it's got tactical in the name, right?
Oh.
Yeah. How about the Beretta 1301 tactical?
Ooh. I like ye. I like ye. Yeah, I approve of that. Stamp Ghost approved.
You would.
I'll put it this way. I only get a little bit of an itch, but I don't get the full-on rash when you start talking shotguns if you're talking about a tactical shotgun.
Does your stamp really mean anything?
Hell no.
Yeah.
No, it means much less in my household. So, yeah. as I think we all can agree with that. There you go. And we've got our special guest tonight, our good buddy. Man, I don't even know where to start with this guy. This guy, we're going to get into his story, but he's been in and out and around and with and through and everything you can within the firearm industry. But a few years ago, he took that leap of faith and really started an organization that I don't know if he truly understands how far it is reaching and how much it's helping. I hope he does, but we're going to go into it. We have our good buddy, Mike Sedini from Walk the Talk America. What's up, brother?
Hey, man. Thanks for that intro. That's awesome.
I've turned into a hype man, bro. That's all I am. You know, Conor McGregor doesn't need his own hype man, but I want to be a hype man, you know?
Yeah, no, you're hired. Yeah, I can't pay you, but you're hired.
Oh no, it's all good. It sounds like the rest of my life. Can't pay you, but I'm going to have a hell of a lot of fun doing whatever I'm doing, you know.
Yeah, no doubt.
No, we're gonna have a good discussion tonight. And first of all, I want to start off for someone that takes the mental health side of life very seriously. You and I have had long discussions, been on some I don't even know what they call it, but with the VA, we've been on some groups together and meetings with some people. You take this thing very seriously, and we're going to find out the story. Most people do, but we're going to go into the origins of this. But then we're going to talk about moving forward and what's going on with Wealth Talk America. But before we do that, we usually have on Thursdays, Saturdays, and Mondays we have our polls. Last week I forgot to put the polls out because we were iced in, and I was busy watching Netflix and all that about being snowed and iced in the house. So I'm not very smart, and I didn't put the polls out. So what we're going to do, we're going to have a little fun. We're going to do some with Mike and Clover. Instead, we're going to do some fun little rapid fire questions real quick to get kind of the blood flowing, let people get out with the notifications. So here we go. I'm going to start with Mike. What's the best present you ever received?
The best present I've ever received?
Yeah.
Was being left alone. Like,
I get it.
Yeah, I honestly, I cannot. There's nothing that makes me more uncomfortable, like my whole life, than receiving a gift from somebody.
Yeah,
I don't know what that is. It's just like a weird thing. So, like, I don't mind giving them. It just there's this. It's like a tick or something. So being left alone, like I don't like my birthday recognized. I can't stand holidays.
You know, my wife and I are fairly similar. We don't really celebrate much. Like for birthdays, we'll cook whatever their favorite meal is, or but we don't do the present thing. Valentine's, we don't do the present thing. The only thing we really do presents is for Christmas, and that's more for my daughter and all of that. I mean, we're just it's what it is. It's what it is. But yeah, Clover, are you a night owl or do you like the night or day? Are you a night owl or not?
That's a good question.
It's supposed to be a rapid fire thing. I'm just saying.
He's lining it up.
Don, that's yeah. I can't answer that. I don't know.
Okay. All right.
I'm probably
I'd rather be up at night than I would be during the day if I had a choice.
I mean, I like staying up because it seems I get more done.
Yeah.
However, I get really, really cranky really, really quick without my sunshine. So
you do.
Yeah. So while I would want to say night owl, it's like, I can't do that for very long.
Yeah. AB says the best present's ammo. Well, right now, I would guarantee it. I'm gonna go back to Clover real quick and go back up to Mike after this. Clover, what do you think that people most misunderstand about you? What's the most misunderstandable thing about you that people just don't get?
Ooh.
I have to ask the tough questions.
Yeah, it's rapid fire. It's like rapid fire is supposed to be like favorite ice cream, favorite cereal. Like you ask these really deep philosophical questions.
I've got this.
But at least you're only asking one question a piece. You're not ghosting us.
Right.
So.
I've got this 350 rapid fire question. You just click the button, it pops one up. So
misunderstood. I think misunderstood. Talking about like online, or are you talking about like local?
I mean, whatever. Just what's that one thing that most people that meet you probably misunderstand about you?
Oh, that meet me? I probably seem a lot more friendly than I actually am.
That's true. I can see that. All right. And Sadini, the last one for you. What is your favorite go-to karaoke song? Like, what's the go-to, babe? You got it.
Not applicable. Like, unless I'm on black tar heroin and someone put that there, I'm not singing karaoke. That's never going to happen. But if I,
if you had to,
we're hitting the karaoke bar now. Shot 23.
Yeah, so shot 23. We're going to get your ass in a karaoke bar somehow.
What's an easy song to sing that you can't massacre? I don't have that great a voice. You know what I mean?
Who cares?
Anything Guns N' Roses, because you can
anything from Bob Dylan, anything from Janis Joplin.
How about like Don't Stop Believing from like Journey? I mean, even if you try to hit, you're not going to hit the notes, but everyone tries and everyone understands you're not going to hit those notes,
I think Mike is a take on me guy. That's what I think.
Yeah, there you go. Take on me by
maybe some Milli Vanilli.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Jesus. Sorry, this got way downhill. So we're gonna kind of get into it. And the funny thing, you brought up shot because we were just talking before the show started. We had a moment at shot and we went by and we saw Mike a couple different times. We were crossing paths. So he was busy. You were in meetings a lot during shot, which is a great thing. But we were able to catch up with you. And the first time we caught up to you, Zeke was there, and the four of us start talking. And it went down like the weirdest rabbit hole conversation that you could possibly think of. Somehow, some way, we're in the middle of SHOT Show 2022 in Vegas, and we have a 15 to 20-minute conversation on men's hair care products for the balding man. And how we got on that, I don't know, but it was probably the best conversation we had at SHOT. And Mike was saying that was just like surreal. That how do we get there? I don't even remember. How did we get there? Was Zeke talking about his product that he's using or something?
That's one of the beautiful things about Zeke is he just plays it straight up no matter what. And I don't know, he said something about his hair thinning, and then I was just
it's flowing, it's thinning, but it is definitely flowing.
But I have that exact issue, so that really spoke to me because I was like, oh, there's another dude that's going to put it out there. Because I was like, yeah, man, like I look at my hair every day, I want to puke. And then like even today, I took my daughter to get her hair dyed, and the girl that dyes her hair was giving me a haircut. And my daughter's like, don't take too much off because he's losing it. Like she literally said that. So I think about that conversation at SHOT Show like every day. You guys still have hair.
Here's a beautiful thing about it is I'm going to be blessed. I think, knock on Formica. My dad, my grandpa, like all the guys in my family have always had like thick heads of hair. It's been white. I'll be white in the next 2 or 3 years, but a lot of hair. So
comes from your mother's side.
Well, then I don't know. I never met my grandpa on mother's side because he died.
What they say anyway.
I was a bad omen to him. He like literally died the next day after I was born, but I never got to meet him. But I think he had a lot of hair too, real thick hair. So I don't know. But yeah, that was an interesting conversation. But before we kind of go into all that, let's talk about SHOT Show real quick. You were busy, Mike, and with meetings and all that. I know a lot of things have come out of that. Is there anything that you want to talk about that maybe kind of happened at SHOT that was not expected for Walk the Talk America?
For me, it was more or less confirmation that people have been talking about Walk the Talk America. That was really good to hear. I mean, I had quite a few people like stop me when they'd see me maybe walking one of the halls or something, and they're like, "Man, I'm hearing so much stuff about Walk the Talk America. That's great." For me, the payoff obviously was converting some of these companies to get on board with what I call like this movement, right?
Sure.
Hornady made a pretty big commitment. And when I say commitment, I don't even mean just financially. I'm talking about like getting behind the movement. So like, for example, Century Arms is now putting in their next 30,000 guns the Walk the Talk America flyer, right? Like that's the stuff that, was really exciting. But, keep in mind, like there's a lot of companies that I met with that were like, I've never even heard of you, which is fine. I get it. But like, that's the whole thing is at least now I'm getting the meetings. And that was the beauty about the SHOT Show this year, because not everybody was there. And it wasn't one of those like super crowded SHOT shows compared to like most years. I think I was able to get meetings that maybe I wouldn't have been able to get if it would have been any other year. So.
Yeah. Santee's out there. I want to say hi to her. So she's, if you guys aren't familiar with Santee, she does a great job. Go show her some love. She's doing a great job, kind of starting out in this game, kind of still a newbie, but doing some great stuff. Go check out Santee TV out there. So yeah, for sure. Yeah. And that was the kind of thing about SHOT Show. And I think Clover, we said was, the 4 or 5 that we've been, it was by far the best because you were able to actually have meaningful conversations for us from our side with companies, from the companies with buyers, whether it's media, they cared about the media or not, but able to have those 15 to 45 minute meetings that you're able to have where usually it's 2 or 3 minutes. Hey, here's my card. I'll call you in a couple of weeks and all of that. So I'm glad to hear that you're able to have some meaningful ones. I'm glad to hear that the people were a lot more receptive to Walk the Talk, that we had not heard of you, because we talk about this a lot privately, and Clover jump in here as well. The mental health side of our industry. And I know this is one of the things that you want when you first start out. I love the quote that you said, that you want people to be able to talk about mental health like it's the common cold. And that stuck with me from day one when you said that. And I think it's getting a lot better, but that's still kind of the dark cloud, big elephant in the room that the industry / community, they really don't want to talk about. But they don't understand that by not talking about it, they're doing a disservice to those. We've all had mental breaks. We've all had crises in our lives. We've all had moments of non-clarity. But there's something that you can do about it when it comes to the firearms industry. We talk about when there is a mass shooting, the first thing that our industry does is kind of what you were saying is we blame mental health. We blame the suicide. Well, those numbers aren't real because 2/3 of those are suicide. Instead of just making it as an argument against it, why don't we say, yeah, 2/3 of those are suicide. What can we do to help? What can we do to stop this? So what I want to do is and I know we've been down this road before, but there's a lot of new people that might not have heard, and you're coming in up on an anniversary here in a few months, but I want people to kind of briefly kind of hear the story of when, how, and why Walk the Talk America became what it is.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm a third generation firearms industry professional. I've said this before. I got into firearms because of nepotism. I didn't have any hate for firearms at all. I just didn't have any love for firearms either. But it was a family business, and I knew after I graduated college, I was going to go work for my family. It was kind of like a known thing, which wasn't a bad position to be in. But being that I wasn't like your stereotypical gun guy, I didn't grow up around guns. I was able to kind of sit back and recognize little patterns and just see little learning in the industry, right? Hanging around with people that were hunters, hanging around with people that were obviously, like, I started hanging around with more active duty military and vets, first responders, just by nature, if you go to any gun show. And one thing that I noticed is that we had an issue talking about suicide, and it was something that plagued us. So like at many shows, you'd see somebody there and you'd develop a relationship with them, and they would come to like the NRA show or the SHOT Show. And then like a year later, they may be gone. And, you just, oh, this so-and-so did this with a fire, they took their life, and it's like, wow. But at that time, like there was a narrative that the NRA created that, those are the things that are going to get weaponized against us. And part of it's probably true, right? Like there were things that could be weaponized against us. But in 2009, the president of my company and a really good friend of mine took his life with a firearm. And that, for me, when that happened, one of the oddest things was like his funeral was like a who's who of the firearms industry, and nobody talked about it. Like we swept it under the rugs. It didn't make it in any of the industry mags, nothing like that. And I thought, this is so weird that especially when we lose the people that we hold near and dear to our hearts, but we can't talk about it because we don't want it to be weaponized against us. It's a bad position to be in. And I always wanted to do something, but I never could put my finger on what, right? What can we do? And then in 2018, I had a chance meeting with a lady, and she said that if you think it's all mental health and mass shootings are mental health and suicide, all this stuff, how do you work with the mental health community to come up with solutions that you guys can do if you can't do restrictions and stuff like that? Which was a really brilliant question. And for me, I just wanted to take the easy way out. I thought, what if we give them money, right? Because they got to have the answers. Like, I think a lot of people in the gun industry had that feeling, like they have the answers. They need to solve it. It's not the tool, right? But unfortunately, they don't have the answers. They never had the answers. The answers weren't there. I had read so many articles when I first started the organization because I had to find a mental health organization that was, I want to say, gun neutral. They didn't have to. I knew there wasn't going to be one that was like super pro gun. But I couldn't contact one that was anti-gun. That was never going to fly. But I found Mental Health America, and in their position paper 72, they say, this is going to be an unpopular opinion, but we're going to take this stance. We do not believe that restricting people's firearms or going after guns is the answer to solve any of these issues. they blamed it more on budget cutbacks and everything like that. So to me, I was like, oh, this is perfect. Like, what if I can rally the gun industry to give them money to, make up for some of the loss that they've had over the years? And, there's plenty of articles out there that talked about budget restraints and cutbacks and mental health and things like that. So it seemed good to me. But unfortunately, they just didn't have the outreach and the stuff that I was looking for. They didn't have the answers. And, there's plenty of articles.
Whoa.
Somebody jumping in? No.
Yep, it was weird. I have no idea.
No, but so, having said that, it was a very depressing day when I realized, like, I don't want to just give money to mental health. Anybody could do that, right? So it was a very, very, very depressing day to go back to my board and be like, they don't have the answers, and they're telling me to do suicide prevention. And at first, I couldn't wrap my head around that because I was like, oh, I want to do mass shootings. I want to stop mass shootings. And it wasn't anybody in the firearms industry. Everybody was super supportive, but they kept everybody from the mental health side, some of the most brilliant minds in the world, were pushing me back to suicide prevention. And they were like, look, finding the next mass shooter is like finding a needle in a haystack. So I'm watching these people who were supposed to have the answers throw their hands up. Right. That was pretty powerful to me, and pushed me to suicide prevention. And when I finally understood why it is so important to focus on suicide prevention, to get upstream, to prevent the unpredictable, and maybe catch some of the people that potentially could be mass shooters in that wide net, regardless. Right. It was like a light switch. Okay. What are we going to do now? How do we look at what we can do as an industry where we have valuable space? We can communicate sometimes, right? Like, so we can educate sometimes. And I thought, okay, now you got to start figuring out how the gun industry can make these changes and get ahead of this. Mm-hmm. And then it became ultimately like the ultimate goal is to get the firearms industry where the alcohol industry got with DUIs, right? Like, nobody blames Johnny Walker when somebody does something tragic.
That's right. Well, and I think a lot of it comes down to, and what I'm going to mean by this, and I think a lot of people out there will understand, it might not come out the right way. When you talk about mental illness and mental health and suicide and all that, it's a very uncomfortable conversation to have. It's even harder to start, because when someone's trying to start that conversation, whether they're two-way friendly or not, you don't know where they're going with it. So you almost have to like stand back and just kind of read the room for a minute. Like, are they going to be, against having this conversation or whatever? And I'm imagining for you, even working with Mental Health America and all and different stuff, when you go to Century or one of these manufacturers, I would imagine that first few minutes of that conversation is kind of like, I don't know how this is going to go, because it's difficult to start this conversation, much less have the full conversation in itself.
Yeah. I mean, look, all those great meetings I had at SHOT Show, I had one. I'm not going to flame this company because I think they passed me off to one of the sales guys. I think like it was one of those things. It was the end of the day, and they're just like, "Hey, the marketing guy's not here, but talk to that guy." It was really funny because I start off the conversation, and I'm like, "Look, we're gonna have a very uncomfortable conversation, and I'm gonna need you to think outside the box here." And it was really funny because I was like, half of all suicide deaths, or 2/3, are with a firearm, and 2/3 of all firearms deaths, and half of all suicides are completed with a firearm. And he's like, "Nah, I don't know. I'd have to see the numbers on that." I'm like, okay, with all due respect, my man, I live this.
Do you think it's ignorance, or do you think it's just they don't want to see it?
I think it's more defensiveness. Like my whole thing is like I've won so many of these arguments just by validating what people are saying. Like, oh, this is the thing. Yeah, guns kill, man. Like that's what you know what I mean. They kill people, and people take their lives with firearms. And usually, if you just don't try to like defend it in some weird, bizarre way, because people have this tendency, and I get it. Everybody does. It's like, why are you focusing solely on the guns? Right. And the reason why I'm focusing solely on the guns is that's what I grew up in. Like, this is my thing. You know what I mean? Like, if I worked in rope, I probably would do the same thing with rope manufacturers, but I don't. Yeah. Right. So I work in firearms. Where I can make a dent is in that number of suicide by firearms. I'm totally skeptical of being able to make a dent in suicide, period. Like, I don't even know if that's Walk the Talk America's place, right? Like, I think our place is with firearms and firearms manufacturers and trainers and the 2A owning public.
So let me ask you this, and Clover, jump in, bro. This is, how, the deal. But I want to ask you this is, do you think, whether it was when you started, now, or in the future, do you see Walk the Talk America as more of a bridge instead of the guiding beam of light? Because I think that you guys are a bridge. I think with your background, with your friendships / relationships with different people in the industry, I think that Walk the Talk America could be the bridge between mental health and firearms instead of trying to cure it. I think that you are a great organization to bridge the two. What do you think? Did you want to be a bridge, or do you think a bridge is the way to go? Or what was the initial thought? Or did you want to just blast down the door, or what?
Well, that mission has changed so much, and it changes all the time, right? Because opportunities present themselves, or things that have never, expected to happen, right? I guess it depends on who my audience is, right? Like what I'm trying to say, what we're doing. For me, it's super important for the industry to look good. Like, that's another big thing, right? So it's almost like a PR play for us, because, being that I didn't grow up a gun guy, then I became a gun guy just by being in the industry, then going back out to where
didn't have a choice, honestly.
Right, right. But so, like, when I'm running into people, after I've experienced being, I'd say, raised in the gun industry, right? Like, they took me when I didn't know anything about guns, and all the good people, the people that, I'm talking about close peers, like the people at Arms Corps and people at High Point and stuff like that, they were teaching me. I thought, well, this is nothing like what people say about the gun people. Like, you hear all these things like, oh, gun people only care about money. And, I was just like, no, that's not true. Like, you should come to the SHOT Show, or you should come to the NRA show and check it out. Right. So I became one of those guys that started defending the second, not so much because I understood the importance of it, but it was also because, hey, I'm not going to let you say something that's not true, even though these people are not at this party. You know what I mean? So to me, like, there is this sort of guilty pleasure that I get out of being better than most of these mental health organizations that only use talking points, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And you had said earlier that you said that you wanted to, how do I put this? Utilize, like, let's say Mental Health America, and utilize them and use, would you say, 2A neutral organizations that may not be pro, but they're definitely willing to have the conversation about firearms and 2A. I wonder how many of those could you possibly get to become 2A neutral if you ever had the conversation. The problem is will they ever sit down and have the conversation? Because right now they are anti 2A, but if they're looking at it not as a 2A issue, it's a mental health issue. It just happens to be in the avenue of 2A. Would they be willing to have that conversation? But I'd imagine there's a lot of them that won't even have the conversation because they find out that it's a 2A based organization type thing.
Yeah, but it's funny because I haven't really experienced anybody from the outside not really being interested in what we do, because it's such a different look, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's such a different look. You got to remember, like, most of these organizations that are out there that, truly care about trying to help somebody, like Mental Health America, they just want to help people. I can tell. Like, some organizations like Mom's the Man and stuff like that, I think they want to help, but I think that their ulterior motive is to get as many guns away as possible, right?
No doubt.
But when you look at these organizations that want to help, it's such a different look for them to be able to say, like, wait a minute, there's mental health screening flyers in the gun boxes. Like, it's something different, because the only thing that we could all come up with, when we were talking these years where we were kind of at each other's throats or standing on the other side of the room, was they would present restriction and we'd say, no, that's not going to do anything. Right. Like, and it was a standstill.
Clove, I want to let you jump in, and I know that, I mean, you've had many conversations with Mike as well, but is there anything that you want to bring up or ask right now?
Yeah, when when Mike first started off and he was talking about SHOT Show and more and more people knowing what's up with WTTA. I can say from my experience that I experienced that as well. But I'm sure you have too. You remember the early days, right? You remember when Mike was burning candle at both ends and
I think
whatnot.
he still is a little bit.
Well, yeah.
Still running from two booths. It's only
Right.
one
Yeah,
booth.
running around with two booths and
Yeah,
all that good stuff.
Oh, that was
Crazy.
crazy.
Anyway, so I can remember when all this first kicked off, and that's one really cool thing about this is I can remember when it first kicked off, and I'm sure you do too, that we would talk to people and they would be super hesitant, right? Like, oh, I don't know if we should be talking about that. Who's this guy? That sounds dangerous.
Are they in favor of red flag laws? What's going on with this?
I
talking about
don't,
red flag laws.
I don't hardly get any of that anymore. And I think that's a good thing. I think we're moving it. That shows that we're moving in the right direction.
Absolutely. And having companies jump on board. I had a company call me today, a couple hours ago, and said, hey, I saw that you're going to have Sedini on with Walk the Talk America. I'd like to get a hold of them, and I would like to put their cards and flyers in our products as well. And I think that that's one by one. I know Clover. I take the flyers to my gun shop. No, he doesn't put them inside that I know of. He doesn't put them inside the gun box and all that, but he puts them on the counter, and they're there for anyone to walk and grab. Conversational piece. I know Clover's got several local gun shops, and at least one of them puts them in every used gun box that they sell. So that's my next question. I'm going to let Clover talk about that here in a minute, but my next question for Mike is, from a grassroots level, someone that not like yourself, but like us that are just living in this world, what is the best way, or how can the average person out there that wants to be involved, that supports the mission of Walk the Talk America, what can the average person do to help progress the message of Walk the Talk?
Well, I mean, obviously, social media has a huge play in it, right? If you're just spreading the word or you repost some of our stuff, like that's awesome, right? Because people see that stuff and we get it all the time. They're just like, hey, somebody reposted one of your things and this is how I found you, right? But the second thing is like if you are involved in the 2A community, and you really are, and you're going to a local gun shop, tell them about us. Say, hey, you should put these flyers out. Once again, like we got to do it ourselves as the 2A community. Like everybody from the firearms manufacturers all the way down to this, like the person who's just the hobbyist, right? Like there's no team that's going to come do this for us and start this for us. There's potentially legislation and there's government, right? And we don't want that. So if the more people we get on board with this, and we can literally say like, this is it's homegrown, like this organization is a homegrown from the firearms industry, made up of individuals. The only person who's not from the firearms industry is Jake Discretion, and look at him now. He's like knows more about guns than I do.
Right. And I was getting ready to bring up Jake because this question came out there, and we'll bring this up, and Clover to jump in as well. How bad is self-medication, or should I say self-acceptable self-medication? I think that self-medication, depending on how you're using it, if you're using it as a mask or a shield for what's going on, it's a bad thing. If you're using it, some people utilize, whether it's CBD or gummies or whatever they choose, alcohol, drugs, whatever they're marijuana, whatever they're using to cope, but it allows them to be happier, be part of society, then it's a good thing. But it's a really fine line between using it as a crutch and using it as a way to get better. So, I don't know, Clover, Mike, if you want to touch on self-medication, because I think that is something that people don't quite understand. There's a very fine line there.
Yeah, I liken it to cold medication, right? Like
Sure.
there's no cure for the common cold, but there's tons and tons of things out there that mask the symptoms, right?
Yep.
And so do I have a problem with from the mental perspective? Okay, I divide things into a couple of categories. The physiological, right, which is potentially some kind of brain trauma, right? Whatever, something legitimately wrong, hormone imbalances, this, that, and the other, right? And medications have legitimate uses to actually treat the problem, right? Rather than the symptoms. Now, do I have a problem with the other side of that where it's not physiological or whatever in nature and people self-medicate, right? Or mask the symptoms? No, with a caveat. No, but what the trigger, what the cause, what's going on, right? You understand why you're feeling the way that you're feeling, right? And if you don't ever delve into the why, right, what the root cause is, then I've got a problem with you. Just whatever you use, I don't care what it is.
Yeah, sure.
Even if it's lead therapy and just going to the range because you're
Or
upset all the time.
people just
Figure
eat.
out.
Sometimes it's just eating a bunch of
Right.
food. That's
Yeah.
whatever the vice is. Yeah.
Figure out what the problem is, and then whenever that trigger occurs and you're having a bad day, then yes, do what you've got to do to make yourself more comfortable to get through, right? This too shall pass. Use that medication long enough to get you through that episode or whatever's going on and move on. But to me, it's all about awareness, not in the general sense that we all need to be aware that
Sure.
mental health is a common thing with us all, but awareness in yourself to know, hey, this thing that's going on, it's not the end of the world, right? I know what's going on. I can deal with it.
Yep.
And here's how I do that.
Well, it's like Clover, like you said, like you figured out at some point that you need sun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Big time.
That's a real thing. He does get grumpy, man. That's a really like a real thing,
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So that's being self-aware, right? Because now, like, once you've identified what makes you kind of go into a darker space, literally,
right.
Is, something that you can go, okay, I'm acting like this, and this is usually why. I need to do this to remedy it, right? I don't know if self-medicating in terms of like, I need to polish off a bottle of Jack Daniels is going to take you out of whatever dark. I mean, it may, right? Like a weekend with Jack and getting off social media, and that might. I mean, I'm a big, probably shouldn't say this, but I mean, I'm one of a few people in life. My party days are way behind me, and that's probably why I look a rough 49 and I'm 46. But
no, I'm the same way.
Yeah, but dude, I mean, I
drink twice a year. Once is at the Marine party at SHOT, and then once we have a big thing here every August at work, and I have a couple drinks in. I don't drink anymore because we all have demons. We've all done that, been there. Now I don't enjoy it as much. I used to really enjoy having a good time, and maybe I'm just that grumpy old man now. I don't know.
I've never drank because I felt bad mentally or anything like that. Never. For me, and I drink, it's very few and far between when I drink, and I drink because I legitimately want a drink. It's like,
I hear you.
It's relaxing. It's the same as pretty much having a smoke almost. And it's like, I think I'll have a drink and kick back and relax. I'm not feeling bad or anything like that. But for me, I think, speaking to the sunlight issue, one of the biggest things for me to cope with it, right, is to stay busy. I need to stay busy and not realize that I'm missing sunshine. As long as I can stay busy, I'm good.
Yeah.
I think, because 2020, I should say, 2020 SHOT, I met Clover and his wife at your party, and Swagger's party. I came from the Marine party. I was already having a couple drinks. Then we had a couple drinks there at your little thing at SHOT and the party, and that was fun. But once again, I didn't feel like I needed to anymore. I did it because I wanted to, and there's some people that don't know the difference in their lives, and that's where it becomes an issue. Real quick, roll call out there says if Michael has any more flyers. I put a link up earlier in the chat. It says Walk the Talk America resources. Go to that link, roll call, or anybody, and they have a 4.5 by 6.5 inch insert, an 8.5 by 11 insert. Instructor slideshows if you want to add it to your curriculum if you're an instructor. All of those are free. Download, print as many as you would like from that link. If you can't see the link out there in the podcast world, the link's going to be in the description. Go to WTTA.org and hit the resources tab, and you'll have a list of all those cards /flyers that are available for anyone and everyone to print out for free. Absolutely.
And
Yeah,
if
and worst case scenario, like I get it. If you can't print them out, and
Call me. I'll print and mail
I
some.
can mail them out.
here's
To you.
here's the thing, you can print them out, right? And so I'm going to be the mean one in the room. It's I'll take up for Ghost and Mike here, and I'll say you can print them out. Don't look to Mike to send you freaking flyers. Come on, people. We're supposed to
Go
be
to your
helping the cause,
local
right?
Office
If
Depot.
you reach out, you're not going to do it with Staples or Office Depot, but if you find a local print shop, that's above and beyond. If you go to your local FFL, odds are they'll print them out. If they're willing to put them on the counter, they're probably willing. If they're willing to put them in boxes, they're probably willing to print them out. And if they're not, they're probably not willing to put them on the counter. So what difference does it make? Right? But
Like
if you
said,
will go to local
they
print shops,
they can print them out anytime they want. Also,
yeah, local print shops would be probably more than willing to print up 100 or something of them at a time or something like that. Reach out, network, and that's more people that we're making aware when we do this. That's the other thing, right? Can you do them yourself and take them? Yes, you could. But if you bring in a printer, a local printer, now they know what's going on, right? And so that's the whole thing about this awareness is it takes a village. Let's bring a village into it.
Absolutely. Buck out there says Walmart will absolutely. I mean, anyone will. I want to go before we move on to different topics. I do want to mention something that we were talking about in the discussion earlier, and you and Mike and Clover were talking about, hey, you kind of realized that you needed sunlight, and it's being that self-awareness of what's causing the problem. Let me tell you guys one thing real quick. From personal experience and from friends and all of that, those that might be coming close to a mental break or already in a mental crisis or have had histories of mental illness, a lot of the times they don't know it. They don't realize that they've changed their personality. They've changed their everyday traits. They don't realize that they're drinking more. They're not spending time with the kids, or they've completely changed. They don't realize that this has happened. So if you're out there and you notice, whether it's a friend, a family member, just someone that you know how their normal personality is, and all of a sudden it's completely different. Sometimes it's, hey bro, how you doing? Is everything okay? Sometimes it's as simple as that. There are people out there truly that may not have any correspondence with another human being for days at a time. And sometimes the simplest, hey bro, how you doing? Everything okay? Do you need to talk with anyone? At least they know there's someone there to talk. They may not even realize, hey, look, I hate to do this, bro, but I've noticed the last week or so you've changed a little bit. Your personality is a little bit sharper. You're more angry or whatever. I've noticed alcohol in the breath when you come to work or whatever. Is everything okay? They may not even realize there's an issue. I can say that from the veteran side of things. A lot of people come home with PTSD. They don't even know they have it. They don't have a clue that they've changed. So the biggest thing, I want to bring Mike in here, and you brought up Jake, and Jake is an absolute rock star. Jake's been on the podcast before. I don't want to let you talk about your podcast here in a minute, but Jake, as far as a mental health professional, is a rock star, and he's walks hand in hand with Mike and Walk the Talk America from the medical professional side. Talks about a lot is what we can do to help people that might have that break or that crisis. And there's a lot of great stories to be told on your podcast. So real quick, I want you to talk, not real quick, take as much time as you want, but I know one of the things that y'all are doing, and I want to put links out there, is your podcast. And I think that it's not just for people that are wanting to know about mental health or have had mental illnesses or breaks in the past. They're just great conversations. There's some great stories of overcoming mental health issues. Excuse me. Talk a few minutes about your podcast real quick, because a lot of people might not know you have one.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. It's called the Guns and Mental Health Podcast. It's hosted by myself and Jake Discretion. And Jake is a licensed clinician, which makes the show really awesome. I guess he adds this element to it that it's cute when I watch it, he does more talking than I do, right? Because I like to listen to Jake and I like to listen to the guests, and I'll just hit him with these questions. But Jake's really cool because what he'll do is he'll take what a guest is saying, and he's so brilliant at this. Like it becomes like almost a therapy session where he's explaining like this is what's happening, or this is, we've actually had guests who admitted after they were on, they were like, dude, I ducked this show for a long time because I was kind of nervous to talk about whatever it was. And then they're like, as soon as I talked about it, it's the best show I've ever been on. Not, like I'm not saying we have the best show, but for that person, like that may have been a really great experience. So we have all different walks of life on there. People that have all been around firearms or been affected by firearms, or just to tell stories and stuff like that. It's like you said earlier, just bridging the gap, having these conversations out there, and passing along information. We have a very split audience. We have a lot of mental health clinicians that listen because Jake brought that, and then we have a lot of people from the firearms industry that listen. So it's pretty cool. But Jake is a rock star, man. I spent 2.5 years just working on this, and he was right there with me pretty much, working just as hard for no money. You know what I mean? So, he nobody can say a bad word about it.
It's a passion, and you have to have passion to do this. It's not easy. I don't know from personal experience, but I can't imagine that working or starting and developing and growing in a nonprofit based on mental illness in the firearms community and industry, it's not an easy gig. So you've got to have passion for it, and that's awesome. Kudos to you.
I appreciate that. One of the coolest things about Jake was like when the way we met is I was a guest on his podcast because he's the host of Noggin Notes, which has been around forever. Yeah. And I was super excited because it was the first mental health side of things, that was inviting me into the world. I'd been on a bunch of podcasts. I've been on both of your podcasts. I've been on all kinds of gun podcasts, but I had never been on somebody that was just strictly mental health. So going into Jake's show, and it was really funny because Jake, when we were talking before the show started, he said, "Hey man, I own a gun and I have a concealed carry, but we can't talk about that." It was funny how Jake was in the beginning because he was like, "I'm going to get shunned by my own people. Like, we can't talk like that. I'm going to ask you questions. You're going to," but then to see the progression or the arc of Jake's character, right, in this whole thing is, he always says, I had to come out of the closet as a gun owning clinician, which he did, and he did that well. And it inspires other clinicians to do it too, because there's a lot of them out there. We just got to make them feel comfortable coming forward because, you do not want to get shunned by your own community. And, we understand that. So it's been really awesome to watch that growth of Jake. And now guys going on trainings and stuff like that, and
he's diving in. I mean, it's awesome to see. Yeah. Real quick before we move on, I want to bring up the Santee says the military encouraged to hide their emotions and feelings. Yes and no. And I agree with the sentiment of what you're saying. I don't want to say that they encourage you to hide it. What they encourage you to do is have no emotions or feelings. Okay. Now, I can't speak for other branches in the Marine Corps. I can tell you one thing. They wanted us to feel like we were bulletproof Superman that could take a hill with firefights going all around. We could run and mission accomplished. They want you to have no fear, no emotions. They want you to have no feelings. They encourage that. Encourage is a strange word. They want you to have no emotion. They want you almost like robots because you have to have that to do your job. Okay. Well, now what they do encourage, unfortunately, is if you are in a combat zone and you get a TBI or a traumatic brain injury, a TBI or whatever. Once again, they don't encourage it, but most people will not document those because that typically ends a career. Okay, let's be real. So it's not that they encourage it, but they almost force you to hide feelings, emotions, injuries, and all of that stuff. Go ahead, Clover. Sorry about that.
So yeah, I'm glad you're in here. I mean, it's nice to to be able to bounce this particular idea off of vet because I'm curious.
Mhm.
And so I've heard you talk before about vets that come back and they have the guilty syndrome thing going on and
Absolutely.
all that, right?
That's a real thing.
So, one thing is obviously those in the military see a lot of hardship, right? They see a lot of tough, rough stuff, right? And so a lot of regular people see that as well. And so
Mhm.
I think one issue, maybe, and correct me if I'm wrong on this or whatever, but I think one issue maybe the military has is not directly tied with the tough guy thing that, like you were talking about.
Sure.
It could also be that, and regular people experience this, whether whether it's law enforcement, whether you just deal with the public on a regular basis, that
Mhm.
sort of thing, where you see so many people having hard times, right? That you almost feel that your problems are so small. Like my problems, you know what I mean? It's like,
Mhm.
who am I to complain and seek help for my problems? Because look at all, it could always be worse. Look at all the crazy out here that's going on and everything else, right? And so we neglect ourselves, not
Correct.
not doing it intentionally or anything. We just don't think our problems are big or that are big enough. And what happens is it keeps piling up and piling up and
Yep.
piling up until it
Absolutely.
reaches a breaking point. And I think that could be partially, I think it's a human condition, right? I don't think it's necessarily military or civilian. I think that's just a human condition. But the
I
military thing, obviously seeing a lot more hard times in the military could bring that on even more so.
Well, to a certain extent, but I think a lot of it comes down to pride,
Mhm.
ego, whatever you wanted to use as an adjective to someone not wanting to either admit it or even acknowledge that
Mhm.
there's a problem. We
Mhm.
talked earlier about people not even knowing there's a problem.
Right.
But the next step is people that know there's a problem and hide it or
Right.
don't want to face that. And that's where it becomes dangerous because, and Mike, I want to bring you in because you've talked with a lot of mental health professionals, but there's got to be some point that it goes from hiding it to where it consumes. And it's almost like there's no in between. It's either you're hiding it, not even acknowledging there's a problem until the problem consumes you, and there's almost no turning back at that point. And that's where I would like to, and I'm sure Walk Talk America is, we want to be there. We want to stop that from happening. We want to help you acknowledge, help you get treatment, understand that there are ways out of this before it comes past that point of no return.
That's a before stage 4
Right.
mentality that
I don't
mental
know
health.
all the stages and all that, but yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
listen
Before
to
stage
Jay
4,
talk
right?
about it. It's crazy
Yeah.
because he can just spit it out. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
if you look at like that theory before stage 4, it's like they apply it like with cancer, right? You don't wait till
Right,
stage 4 to go get help,
right.
or you
It's
address
almost
it early. And that's the thing about the screenings. Like I have a lot of people are just like, I've had people tell me this. They're like, oh, I don't need the screenings. I'm fine. And I'm like, you don't have to be in crisis to take the screening. Like
right.
you could just go in and just kind of, it's like doing a checkup on your car, right? Like make sure all the hoses are attached properly, make sure everything's running right. That, um, people take screenings all the time just to see where they're at, as long as they're answering them honestly, and that's really what we're trying to get to. And, my biggest thing is like, we have to take this back out of people. Like we have to demand, we have to be a bunch of Karens, right? Like we have to demand that just because we're gun owners doesn't mean that we can't have access to help without the or with the fear of restriction. We need to get rid of that. We need more clinicians to step forward and literally say 2A friendly. Like that needs to be a category, because there's categories for everything. LGBTQ, airline pilots, single moms. Like if you go on the backside of Psychology Today and you look at all the categories that every clinician can check to show where their expertise is at, you'd be blown away by all the stuff that's on there. And then you'd be
Yeah,
blown away what's not on there, which
right.
is like 2A, gun friendly.
Well, let's just take this as an example. I think this is fascinating. What if there were a bunch of mental health clinicians, professionals, whatever you want to call them, throughout the country that started like through Walk the Talk America or on their own? I know there is one, a smaller one, but doctors, but make it more mental health exact professionals that maybe even put a sticker on their window or on their website, 2A friendly.
Right.
And how many people would sit there and say, okay, I don't really want to talk about this. That dude's 2A friendly. Maybe that's someone that I can at least have comments, hey, we both enjoy guns or whatever. Establishing that quick common theme and common interest could help someone open up. I think that is something. I don't know if you guys are working on that or Jake works on that.
No,
But that would be a network of 2A friendly mental health professionals.
Right. That speak our language. But that's what we're getting. So let's talk about the course that Jake and I throw, right? Where we give continuing education credits to clinicians that come through and take it. It's a 3-part course. We've had many clinicians take all 3 parts and they use the badge that we give them, like, the certification and everything like that. We just need more of that. Right. So that's one of the things like I'm going and chasing money for, because I need a clinician like Jake in every state. Like, I need to find that person and I need to motivate them. Right. And that could be in the form of some financial compensation. That's one of the things we're trying to build right now, because these things take money. And especially to give the continuing education credits in each state is different. So you need someone governing that in each different state. They're different organizations. So you need to, or handling that, right?
Having like a state branch almost, or
almost like the
organization that answers to a larger order. Like, yeah, absolutely.
Like the DC project, right? Like a DC project.
Director. Exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So we're working on that. And I think that's the best way to handle things, because let's face it, like if we're going to convince gun owners to step forward and go get help, right? And the 2A is that important to somebody, right? Because that could be, we see people vote purely on the 2A.
100%. 100%. Yeah, absolutely.
Um,
I'm not one. I don't think anyone in this, the 3 of us are not like that, because we have other issues. But yeah, there are people that are truly, absolutely.
It's a non-starter if the person is pro 2A.
100%.
Right. And there's nothing wrong with that. But my whole thing is like, that's the person that also needs to know that the person that they're going to open up to and talk to is going to understand that if you say to them, I had anxiety today and I went and I shot 100,000 rounds at the range, there's no cocked eyebrow. Like, what does that mean? That you're like, oh, that's cool. What'd you shoot? You know what I mean?
Cool. 100,000 rounds is epic, man. Good, great.
Especially if it's like in a minigun, because it would last like a minute or 2,
right?
But it would be an epic minute. Talk about a bad minute.
Yeah, that's the thing that we got to build. Like, we have to build that network, and I think it's important. I think it just invites more education, and that's the biggest thing I think we face as gun owners is we're always trying to educate people that are curious. Yeah. Right. Like, gun owners are like no other people. Like, all you have to do is say, like, I want to learn about this. And usually that person will take you shooting. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I'll bring all mine. You can shoot everything,
Yeah.
and it is a very welcoming, you're right. It is a very welcoming community. It also has another side to it that every group community has the other side to it. Real quick, you mentioned a couple things. We talked earlier about what people could do, and you also talked about very briefly, you talked about the free screening. So what I want to do is I put the link out there, but it has more significance than what you think. It's walkthetalkamerica.org/love, and it's a free mental health screening that is, they're not going to take or WTTA.org. Yeah, it's a lot easier. That's what I use, actually. But they're not going to ask names. They're not going to ask any personal information. It is truly anonymous. They're not keeping track of anything. So if you're out there or you know someone, take this screening. The reason why it is also something we talked about earlier is what you can do. Clover and I have been wearing these bracelets for years now. And Mike, everyone knows that this never, take a shower at nighttime. It never leaves. But what it says is WTTA.org/love. It is this exact free screening website or this page that is on this bracelet. If you're interested in supporting, I've got some that I can send you, buy some, whatever. This right here, I can't tell you how many conversations this has started simply because of a bracelet. and you want to talk about something like, what is that? What is that? It starts a conversation. I know Clover's been the same way. Clover has been at certain places and seen a flyer or seen his bracelet and started conversations with people that had no intentions in having that conversation. That's exactly what it needs to be, because we need the rest of the world to know that we're not just gun crazies. That's what they think we are. They think that we're out there wanting to be Doc Holliday and Billy the Kid running around shooting up the world. They need to know that we're normal people, but they also need to understand that we do care about the world, and we don't want anyone to die either. We're not happy when there's a mass shooting. We're not happy when there's a suicide by firearm. And that's the whole purpose. If you want to help, simply wearing a bracelet, printing out flyers and taking them to your local gun shop or anywhere, your community center, just put them up on a bulletin board somewhere. You'd be surprised at how many people you don't know would be interested in that, whether they're firearm enthusiasts or not. Clove, I know that you've had some experience with not only the bracelet, but with flyers and all that.
Yeah,
I know
the
you've had some
biggest
positive experiences, more or less. Yeah.
the biggest point I would make with the flyers is that it nobody even has to take one off the counter of the gun shop or take one off the bulletin board at the YMCA or whatever it might be. It's just the fact that they walk by and they've seen it, right? I mean, we live in
Absolutely.
a wonderful world with search engines and all kinds of things at our disposal, right? And so, maybe down the road they've seen that flyer and they just read the bold text of the headline, and then they get
Sure.
into a situation or they have a family member and they go, "Whoa, what was that?" Right?
Mm.
Like there was something that was talking about mental health in the screenings, and if somebody needed help, I wonder what that was, right? And then so maybe that prompts them to get online and start trying to look up and research stuff. And ideally, do we want them to find WTTA? Well, yeah, sure, that's the point. But that could at least give them enough to go on where they try to seek help, right? They know something has went
Plant
on.
that seed. Plant the
But yeah,
seed.
I mean, I gave away, Lord, I don't remember. It's been too long ago now. I don't remember if it was the first batch it had to have been, because I haven't printed any for the gun shops in forever. They take it upon themselves to do that now.
There
So
you
it's
go.
probably that first batch. But yeah, I was printing them out, and from the time I printed them out to the time I got home, I didn't even deliver them that day to the gun shops. But from the time I printed them out at Office Depot, and then I stopped also at McDonald's, ate some lunch while I was sorting them out. I think I gave away 4 of them or something. I think I
Yeah.
gave away 2 at Office Depot and 2 at McDonald's, or maybe it was 3 at Office Depot and 1, I don't remember. But
Yeah.
we were talking a span of like an hour, it
And we don't even
was
know
it
if
was
these are
it was crazy.
2A people now. They're just people that are interested
No,
in
I didn't ask, I didn't care, and
exactly.
and in fact,
Exactly.
the whole
Boom.
firearm thing didn't even come up, right?
That's the whole point.
I mean, it
Absolutely.
wasn't even a thing. They were like, "What is this?" And they go, "Oh, it's a friend of mine's got this organization that bringing awareness to suicide." And oh wow, I got a so and so that's struggling, and I'm like, "Well, here, yeah, can I have one of those?" Yeah, absolutely. That's the whole point. That's why I'm getting
Mm.
these printed out. So, um, yeah, there's no doubt them. That told me that there's no doubt just having these up, getting them out there in some way, shape, form, or fashion,
Mm.
it makes a difference. It has to. If I had 4 people that was impacted in an hour span, imagine if we had hundreds of people across the country that happened, right?
There are people in my small town of rural Arkansas that at least heard of Walk the Talk America. There are
Yeah.
people in small town East Texas where you are that have heard of Walk the Talk America. And that's how it starts. It's got to
Yeah.
organically flow into this thing. Real quick, I want to say something because I've got I want Mike to tell a story real quick because I think it's awesome. Real quick, I want to touch on the CNT Designs and Arms says, what about treating guns as the problem? We don't do that with any other product. And I hear what you're saying, but we do. This is the community in the industry that all of us hyper focus on what's being said or done to or about us. So we know that it happens where they blame the firearm. I would imagine that if you were the PR person or marketing person for one of the big three, the Ford, Chevy, Chrysler in Detroit with cars, I'm sure that it goes along people blaming cars for drunk drivers. So blaming the firearm for suicides, yes, but let's not be naive to think that we're the only industry that our tool is blamed for death. It's not the case. The problem is when ours are blamed, it's because of something that's horrific, that's usually on TV. And we get probably more exposure, bad press for our tool. But let's not be naive to think that cars aren't blamed for things and all these other tools aren't blamed for death.
Well,
Go ahead.
and that's I don't see it. We're not blaming the firearm. Like nobody with WTTA, nobody here is blaming the firearm.
No,
But
I
at the
think what he's
same
saying is
time, a lot of
let's
people.
get rid of guns.
Well, I mean, a lot of people seem to they seem to take this stance that my facts don't care about your feelings, and when you got somebody with the opposite opinion, you just smother them with facts and bully them around like that, right? And it's
Yeah.
like, okay, well, if we're gonna have that attitude, then let's face some facts. 2/3 of firearms death are suicide. Why? Firearms deaths are suicide.
Mhm.
Why? Because firearms are easy. It's quick.
Absolutely.
It's easy.
Absolutely.
It's efficient, right? We can't run
Absolutely.
from that. We can't run from that. And what Mike is doing with WTTA, what we're doing on the show talking about it, what countless other organizations that have sprung up and doing things, right? Is to take that and not run from it, but to take that and go, hey, we're a part of this community. We understand all of this, and we can try to make a difference. Heck, if we are the responsible, compassionate, helpful firearm owners that we all know the firearm community is,
Sure.
what other choice do we have, right?
Absolutely.
We can't ignore it.
Yeah,
Now I want to. Oh, go ahead. Yeah, I'm going to get to. We're going to get. Yeah, I want to go ahead and talk about this because this is going to exactly where the industry is starting to step up and not just acknowledge it like privately, but very publicly acknowledging one, there is an issue, two, we can help the problem. And so that's exactly the transition I want to make. I know that you're really excited about a couple of things that we're working. One in particular, I want to go ahead and let you have as much time, and I want to put the camera on you so people can see it as well.
Okay. So this is ArmsCore Ammo. ArmsCore is a huge supporter of Walk Talk America. They've been down from day one. So like my love for ArmsCore and understanding what I was trying to do, it just goes beyond words. But they just started putting the WTTA.org/love right here at the top on their ammo boxes. I'm super excited about that. Just because that takes a lot of balls too, right? Like to be the first. Like there's been gun companies that's done it. There's been optic companies that did it, but ArmsCore literally said, we're just going to put it on the box, man. We don't have to.
We're talking a major ammo manufacturer.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. So it goes back to some of these industries, we talk about the car industry, like or automobile industry. We talk about the alcohol industry. They are really good at beating their chest at all the good they do, right? They'll throw it in like national commercials. Now we can't have national commercials. They're never going to let us have national commercials, right? But we have to do a better job of talking about how what we do, right? Like that this needs to be a big deal. Like I told ArmsCore, I was like, dude, it's history. Like you're doing this. It's history. There's an angle here too that I never thought of. And in a SHOT Show, I had a very prominent lawyer come up to the booth and he was like looking at the box and he's like, this is unbelievable. He's like, I wish I knew about this because there have been times when I've defended companies and I would love to be able to say like, hey, my client tried to get people help. They gave them the resources. Right. Yeah. And we're not responsible because we gave them every avenue to get help. And that's really what we're trying to do, right? We're trying to get gun owners the help they need without fear of consequence. We're trying to point them in the right direction. So I think this is a big deal. And it goes in everything that we're talking about is our industry needs to step up and say, no, we're not the bad guy here. Like we are trying. We try to put this information in there. We try to make every gun owner understand that you have a firearm. You could potentially do something bad with it. Hey, most likely you're going to take your own life before you take somebody else's life with your firearm. That's just facts, right?
That is the fact. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, this is something that we have to accept, but as we start building towards this movement and the gun industry steps up and they start pounding their chest and saying, look what we do. Right. Yeah. And I walk into these meetings with even people that hate us. I'm like, we're better than you. Like, what do you do? Like, you don't do anything. You use buzzwords like, anyone can just sit there and go, and the stigma, you know what I mean? Mental health matters. Right. But if you're only
mental health,
right? Like if your only thing is you're going to come into this meeting and say, well, we strengthened red flag laws, or we put it in legislation that would prevent this stuff. You're not saving lives. You're not doing root cause mitigation.
Nope.
It's not going to work. Like that's why we fight that stuff so much, because we know this damn law is not going to save another life.
Now there is something that I forgot about. And I'm glad you started talking about legislation. 2 years ago, maybe even 3 years ago, whenever it was, I get a text from you at one point, and you send me a picture of this invitation to the White House.
Yeah.
And they bring you in. They're having, I don't know if you talk about it, but you were brought to the White House to kind of be the gun guy in the mental health conversation at the White House. And I'm assuming that you kind of ran into that same thing. Oh, you're the gun guy. What's a gun guy doing here? Why do you guys don't care? How did that go? And I want you to explain the awesomeness that you went to the White House to kind of be the quasi representative of the firearm industry type person in this mental health arena at the White House. How did that go? And how were you met by some of the other organizations?
Well, so they kept calling me Dr. Sedini in their initial emails, right? And so I'm not sure that they may have like missed the target or thought something else, because when I got there and I kept asking them, like, how am I here? Like who got me here? Like, so who recommended me? And they kept saying like, oh, it's because you're you. Like they would do these cute little things where they kind of blow it off, but I never got a definitive answer like why I got there. Something I suspect is when Diana Muller was on the Hill, and she did the "I will not comply" thing. She had brought up Walk the Talk America.
Someone made a note or something. Yeah. Oh,
someone might have made a note. Like that's the only thing I can think of. Because how did I end up on that radar? It was really cool because I thought I was being punked. Like, I was just like, which one of my friends just sent out an invitation like this? But when I actually got it
was a very elaborate invitation.
Yeah,
if it was a punk, they did a great job at it.
Yeah, it's so, looking back on it now, having that actual invitation, like the proper invitation to spend 2 days in the White House trying to solve suicide in the veteran community, is really, really surreal. But to me, once again, I think most of the people, even because you can tell when someone's anti-gun, you literally can feel it, because they're using like super logic. Like they almost cut to that whole, like, if there's no guns, if there's no access to guns, then there's no death. Like death goes down by gun, of course. If there's no alcohol, no one drives drunk, right? But you can kind of feel that energy from people.
That go in the Roaring 20s, by the way. Banned alcohol.
But what was cool about that room was, and I had some help, right? Like there was I told this story before. There was a highly decorated gentleman that after I gave my little TED talk, and I had said in the talk, I said, the gun industry can help you, but we can't be the villain anymore. Like you have to make us a good guy.
That's powerful.
Right. And
then, there's no response to that. There's no logical response to that.
Right. That's the thing, is like when I'm providing solutions, not just problems, and I'm not blaming any of the people sitting in the room at the White House, like, hey, this is a mental health thing. You guys are like there's a different, I guess, receptiveness, right, from people. But so this highly decorated gentleman had stood up, and I know you guys are going to totally relate to this, right? But he did this whole speech, and it looked like I paid him. Like, he's like, you need to listen to that guy. He's pointing at me, right? I'm the only gun guy in the room. Only when I say gun guy, I'm the only firearms industry.
Because I love the fact that this is when I first met you 4 or 5 years ago. You told me you're the most ungunned gun guy in the world, and
I didn't give myself that nickname. I that's what people called me.
Yeah,
because everyone used to make fun of me because they're like, dude, you're like the most ungunned guy in the world. Like, people would hand me a gun, and I was like, if I wasn't familiar with it, I'm like, okay, what does this knob do? Dude, when you only focus on your guns for so long, and you're only in the handgun space, right? Like, just, and it's not something that I talk about. Like, that was my work, right? So like, I'm sitting around dinner tables and people like want to talk about guns, and I'm like, can we talk about something else? Like, I literally just spent the whole day selling them. Like, that's how that ungun guy thing came about, because they're like, oh, you don't act like it, right? So this gentleman though that stood up, it was great. He said, he's like, you guys gave me a gun, you told me to name it, and he's like, you made it part of my identity. He's like, you sent me overseas to kill with it. He's like, I did whatever you asked me to do. And he's like, then I came home and you had no purpose for me anymore. And he's like, and the first thing you want to take away from me is the thing you told me to name, my identity, which is the gun. Right. And that was like the coldest, baddest moment in the room. Like I was just like,
I would imagine it was silent at that point.
Yeah. And it was great because he's like, listen to this guy. And I'm just like, oh, this is perfect. Because now all these people are going to see me in a different light, because they're just like, he commanded that type of respect. And, the White House was a surreal experience. I could have done that and just not even contributed. I could have just been in the room listening, because like there are some really brilliant minds there. I made some great relationships. My work with the VA.
You don't get asked to the, and I know you're downplaying it because of Diana Muller. You don't get asked to the White House for no reason. So there's that, go ahead.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's one of those things, like I said, even though I kind of had a feeling that the roadmap that and you can go online and find the Prevent's roadmap. It's on there because it prevents suicide. Even though I knew that with this administration, and they did it again, they had another team for the Biden administration, and I was not invited to that. Right.
Some of the discussions we had on the task force a few years back with the VA was amazing, because I personally heard, and we're talking with like national heads of different,
very high up individuals,
like, in the VA. High up in the VA, which I don't know. I know I didn't belong there. I was there because of you, but they're wanting to know why, huh?
I said I didn't belong there either.
Well, yeah, but listening to them, they even understand that there is an issue, and even the high ups at the VA didn't know what to do, because they were asking, what can we do to do this? What can we do to do this? And then what can we do to get veterans on our side again? Mm-hmm. That's a much bigger conversation than what we're trying to have right now. We should try to focus on how to fix the problem. If you fix a problem, some of the vets might come back, but if all you're worried about is getting veterans to like the VA again, it's a long road just for mental health. It's much beyond that. But the fact that you were able to get involved, and I was lucky to be involved for a short time, but you're talking with powerful people in Washington, and they're having the discussion on mental health. That had to have been pretty cool, because there's a reason why you were asked to that task force as well. You must have impressed someone when at Washington to say, whether or not he's a gun guy or not, he makes some valid points and he's wanting to help. He's
presenting something new.
Exactly. It's not the same old stuff that doesn't ever work. The reason why the VA hasn't gotten better is because they still believe that the old stuff will eventually work. You've got to think outside the box. And it sounds weird, but Walk the Talk America is outside the box in its essence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. And that's the thing is like, and that's the other thing I kept, when we gave those little speeches, I was like, firearms owners and vets and everybody knows the local gun shop is the place to go, right? Like many vets, many first responders will hang out there. They'll just hang out at a gun shop. I've worked in a few gun shops during my time doing promotions and everything like that. And I always thought, how cool is it that there's like 8 people here that aren't going to buy a damn thing, but they're just bullshitting. You know what I mean? Like they're just
Right.
sitting there talking. And if you want to connect with a individual, whether that be just a regular gun owner or a combat vet or whatever, right? Like they're going to go to the places they trust to get their information.
Sure.
And that's why it's so vital to make that information through the channel of firearms. So the firearm can represent freedom. It can represent like your family. It can represent you, but it also could represent a gateway for people to get the help they need when they're in crisis, right? Like have it all be encompassing. It just made sense. And since we're talking about the VA stuff and the work that we did with the VA, and I'm not going to bore the listeners with this, it's going to mean nothing, but we need to talk. Amy Johnson left the VA. And I'm actually having to do her own thing, and I'm having a meeting with her in the morning. So I'm kind of interested. I'm kind of interested in what she says.
For years,
Yeah, but did I ever tell you guys about the VA commercial?
So, yeah, you and I had talked, and we talked about some slogans. I don't remember if you remember that conversation. We were talking different slogans, and even Jake called and was trying to help out a little bit,
right?
And asked about some slogans, and I was like, "Well, how about this? How about that?" But I never heard what happened to it. So, how did it end up going?
We ended up. They threw some commercial ideas to us.
Yep.
They were filming a commercial, and they asked us to rewrite them. So Jake and I just started rewriting all the commercials, right? And they said, "Do you want to come out to LA while we film this commercial?" And I said, "Sure." Jake couldn't. He had so I go out there, and I think they were trying to be really nice to me. Like they're like, "Hey, we want to
put cheer for you and all that."
Yeah, like we're gonna put him in the commercial. And it was really funny because when I got on set, and it was like a Hollywood set, like they had gone all out, and I noticed that I was like super old, like compared to everybody else there. And I tried to give them an out. I was like, "Hey, you guys don't have to put me in the commercial. This is okay." And then like when they're like, "No, like we want you in this commercial," I was like, "Do you want me to be like the old drug dealer at the party?" Right? I was literally like
old creepy guy that shows up, "Hey guys,"
dude that graduated high school that's at the high school party like 10 years later. Because I was like, should I sell drugs at the party? Like, where's my purpose in this party? And it was funny because
my character.
Because the commercial was basically this vet comes home and he's visiting all his old friends and they haven't grown up. Right. And he's walking through this party and they're just like, "Yo, bro, like, it's good to see you, man." And he's really struggling with, his suicidal ideation and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But so they ended up putting me in there, and I was they made me the bartender. Like I'm sitting at a bar, which totally makes sense. But it's really funny because you had all these like young actresses and actors from LA, and like you sit around, you make a lot of small talk.
A towel over the shoulder. "Hey guys."
Yeah. It's really funny because like one chick was like, "What is this about?" And I was like, "Oh, this is for Trump 2020. And she's like, "What?" I'm like, "This is a Trump commercial." Like, and she like almost like goes white.
Oh my God.
How
did you get me on a Trump commercial?
It's kind of funny how people will do commercials and not ask. Like, because there was a lot of people.
It's a paycheck, bro. That might have been her first commercial. I mean, she was getting a paycheck, or whatever. So yeah, they may not care, but that's awesome. Clove, you've been kind of quiet. Anything you want to bring up or discuss? Jump in, bro.
No, I don't think so.
Okay, all right. I'm just not used to being this quiet. It's not like you. Yeah, and it's funny. You talk about doing that commercial, doing the VA, and that's just a very, it's a huge thing. But that's just one part of it. We've got to get other organizations, and I know Jake's doing a great job on the professional side of mental health. I want to talk real quick, kind of going back to the beginning, not the beginning, but close to the beginning, when you made contact and a relationship with Mental Health America. because I know that you said that was kind of a big turning point because you realized that you can't just throw money towards Mental Health America and think that they can solve this. It runs a lot deeper. So when you were talking about the relationship with Mental Health America a couple 3 years ago, where is it from where it started to now? Or do you feel that they're kind of on the same, at least railroad track, where they're starting to understand us a little bit and willing to help, or are they still in the learning stages of what the firearm community is? Because that's a big organization.
Yeah, I think, I think they just leave me alone and let me do my thing at this point. They used to be heavily invested in what I was doing. And I think now they've moved, now that they know that I'm not a big paycheck for them. Like,
Yeah.
I think that I sometimes I don't need them to be involved in everything I do. I would like them to be excited about the things that I do, but like for example, I hadn't talked to Debbie, and you guys have both met Debbie. She's the vice president of Mental Health America.
Yeah.
And then the other day she called me.
She's been at the booth a couple different times.
Yeah. She called me to check in with me, and it's like we have these conversations, and we have very blunt conversations, right? Because she's not a gun person at all. And it was kind of funny. She was like super honest. She's like, yeah, I've been ignoring you lately, but it's not you. It's just I've been overwhelmed with everything that's going on in the world. And then she's like, all these, they still are in that old school mind frame. Like there's not enough education there for them to understand that what they see in the media is not actually the problem with guns, right? Like, I don't know. So I think that they just kind of let me do my thing.
That's good. They trust you at least. They probably trust you more than they did 2-3 years ago, at least.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, you show them things like this, right? Like, how are they going to say that's a bad thing? Like, you need to get more screens out there. It's just like they're sitting there looking for solutions too. Like on top of it, like at one point she had said to me, like, what are some other ways we could work together? And I was like, hey, you want to work on maybe enforcing the laws that are on the books? Like that would be one way to start. Like, but there's no magic team. There's no magic solution. There's no one size fits all solution that's going to get this solved. That's what I mean. Like, I think as a gun industry, if we just do it ourselves,
what I can't imagine running a 501 nonprofit organization, not only in the realm of firearms and mental health. That's a tough gig. You sold your company and dedicated your life several years ago to this project. For people that don't know, he owned Eagle Imports. His family's owned Eagle for a long time, but he was at the time owned Eagle Imports. And if you're familiar with Bursa, and they're one of the largest importers in the country of firearms, sold it to do 100% Walk the Talk America several years ago. I can't imagine that's been the most profitable, honestly, but you do it because it's a passion of yours. So first of all, thank you for doing that, because it's probably brought stress to the family and the lifestyle and all that, but you're continuing to do it. What I want to say is looking back to when you started this a few years back in New Orleans to now, would you have done it again?
Ooh, that's a good question, man. I don't know.
I know you would have done it again. Would you have done it differently somehow?
I guess what I would have done differently was appreciate the fact that this is going to be a much slower turning ship than, because I get super excited about things, and it just made sense to me from the get-go. Because when I walk into rooms, right, like I can walk into a room and it could be Mom's Demand, Brady, Everytown, just standing there, Giffords, and it's really weird. I feel like this makes sense. This is gonna sound awful. I feel like I'm better than them at life, right? So, like, to me, I've never been afraid of those issues or challenges, because if they want to sit down and I appreciate that, man. That's awesome. If they want to sit down and have conversations, I know I'm going to win those conversations. And it's not like a win-lose. I need to win-lose.
Yeah.
I just know that there's nowhere I'm going to be backed into some weird corner and really screw up. And as a matter of fact, like, you use a combination of empathy and then finding out, like, in presenting some real factual stuff and almost agreeing at some points, right? Because none of us want people to die. So I've always had this excitement about it because I was like, okay, they're going to love us. Everyone's going to love us. And I haven't been wrong about that. To be honest, I haven't. You know what I mean? The only
they may not understand, but they don't hate.
Right. Yeah. They actually leave me alone. Right.
Yeah.
Like
beautiful.
Yeah. Like it's just leave me alone. Right. Like they kind of just say like, okay, I don't get it or whatever, but I don't like guns, but I love what these people are doing. And I'm real unapologetic. Like I'm a gun guy now. Like, the guy, like that's when I walk in that world, I tell them I'm a gun guy. Right. Like they have to understand that. Like I'm never going to come off of the second and restriction. I'm never going to be in favor for that, even though there's rumors all the time that like, oh, Mike's up there, trying to do this and stuff like that. It's like, no, I don't.
Rights away. No.
Yeah. Like he compromises, and it's like, no, I don't think you need to compromise anything. I think you could just say like, hey, look, we're not going to be able to solve that. It's out of our reach anyways. Like legislation, that's not my thing. Like I'll tell you the reasons why we shouldn't have certain legislation, or how that legislation is more detrimental, doing more
harm.
We're
not lawmakers here. We're trying to do it. We're having another conversation here. Yeah.
Right. I need them to focus on root cause mitigation. Right. Like do you really care about saving lives? And that's the whole thing. I've always, back to the original point though, I got super excited about what it could be. And I thought that it would probably catch on fire faster. You know what I mean? I underestimated it, and I haven't been wrong yet. It's just one of those things where you look back at it and you're like, I bet on myself in terms of like, oh, the money will come.
Yes, you did. In so many ways, not just financially. You bet on your reputation inside the community, inside the industry, where very easily we know people and we know stories of other people that have tried to open the industry eyes about different things that have been blacklisted, blackballed, shunned away for whatever, and all of that. It's got to be tough to be able to say Arms Corps, all of these different Century. We need to have a conversation on what we can do to help ourselves, because ultimately that's what it is. Whether that they see that right away by talking about mental health and how to get to that root cause mitigation, you'll actually strengthen our community and strengthen our industry. But it probably takes a long time for them to see that.
Yeah, it's, we had an incident about a couple months ago. I got invited to go talk. Thank you, Warsaw. I appreciate that. I had a opportunity to speak. I was invited to speak at a event at San Jose State, and the event was for veterans and also put on by Students Demand Action and Moms Demand Action. And
really?
It was very interesting because I was kind of like, hey, I want to go up there just to see the dynamic of how veterans groups going to sit next to, but it's California, so all bets are off.
Well, that's true.
Yeah, it was really interesting because the Gun Collective found out I was going. I guess somebody in the Gun Collective saw one of my posts because I was, once again, not afraid. I'm on the poster, the flyer of being one of the speakers. And I'm like, I can't
right there along Moms Demand Action and Students Demand Action. There's Michael Sedini. Like, what the hell?
And once again, I didn't think about the blowback that I might get from my own people. I was kind of thinking in my head, like, okay, I'm going to go up there and murder these fools. Like, I'm going to go up there and really bring the conversation back to suicide prevention. I'm not going to let them say dumb shit about mass shootings. They act like that's the issue. And I know it's sensitive in San Jose just because they had a mass shooting not too long ago that was pretty horrific. But it was really interesting because the Gun Collective basically didn't even give me an opportunity to go on any of their platforms and defend myself to go up there, but they didn't realize that I'm crazy and that I literally, this is my life. And then I'd go through the comment section and respond to everybody who's like, traitor, that the hardest part is seeing guys and girls that are, so pro 2A and not taking the time to understand
our allies.
Right. And not taking the time to understand it, getting emotional when they see guns and mental health. And they think that somehow I'm blaming the gun. And You know, that is what sucks about it. And you know, that was a blessing in disguise. It gave me an opportunity, and Jake and I went through and we were literally addressing everybody's comments. Like, okay, think about this, right? And we won people over. So I think
I was like, you probably changed some minds just taking the time to do those comments.
Absolutely. But you know, here's the thing, and regardless of whether you think I should be in the same room as Mom's the Man, right? Like hashtag Michael did nothing wrong. Whether or not you think I should be in the same room as Mom's the Man, right? If you're that weird person who's just like, you can't even be next to that person, they might touch you and you turn into an anti-gun zombie or some weird thing like that. If you don't attend these events, you will be blown away at the narrative that they can create, right? And they let me speak first, which is the worst thing they could have done, is because I got up there.
You set the tone.
Set the tone. And the thing is like, I'm not going to let you have end gun violence as your slogan. I want to end gun violence too. Like that's not yours to keep.
Yeah,
like
you don't get to own that. Exactly.
Right. And for some reason, we just gave that to them.
That's the thing is they truly think that we want gun violence. It's like,
right. Right. And here's the crazy part is like, I now have all this information. Like I see the things that they do and it's brilliant, right? It's super brilliant what they do. And I told this story before, but the Mom's the Man lady she was cool. Like we sat down, we were talking, we both have we're both suicide loss survivors. We have that in common. She actually said that she has friends that are in Moms the Man or gun owners. She doesn't understand what makes us completely different as the legislation piece, right? But they were handing out flyers to every student and everybody in the crowd. And they had all these barcodes on them, you know, like QR codes. Okay. And she gets up and she did something super cool. When I say cool, not what she was doing, but the act of what she was doing. Sure. I looked at Jake. Jake was like 40 yards from me. He was like sitting in the crowd. And I'm like, my mind is blown right now. She gets up and she goes, okay, everybody here.
This or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. She's like, who wants to end gun violence? And the crowd like erupts.
Sure.
Right. As if I were to go up there and said, who doesn't want to see stop?
Yeah, right.
We gotta, right. Who wants to end homelessness? Anybody? Right. Like you can say these phrases, right? And the crowd goes crazy and she goes, all right, take out the piece of paper I just gave you. And she goes, I want you to scan QR code number 1. And she goes, I want you to fill it out. And she's like, you just took the first step in ending gun violence. You just contacted so-and-so and told them that you want to back Bill, whatever. Half these kids probably didn't even know what they were backing. But if you
dangerous, but brilliant.
Right. Dude, super brilliant. Like I looked at Jake and Jake was literally looking back at me. I'm like, he's like, I said, we got to talk about this. Right. But like, this is the stuff.
The next time y'all are going to have one of those, right?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, and dude, this is the stuff. That's why I'm so angry at the gun collective is like, okay, you tried to throw me under the bus and that didn't work. But now have me on your platform to talk about what I came out of that with. Yeah. Because that's how they're winning, right? Like that's how they're winning. And sure enough, like all that stuff that was on that, they just passed that in San Jose where you have to now have insurance. Screws over poor people, right? It was a bill that they passed in San Jose that if you own a firearm, you have to have insurance on that gun, right?
And that was a big part of it, probably.
Yes, because that whole movement, you know, that's what I'm saying.
There's these supporters, whether or not they were or not, they supported that bill.
If I'm like a middle of the road that doesn't even own a firearm, but I'd stop and listen, I'm totally going to say, like, I want to end gun violence. This seems like, okay, if you're telling me the answer of any gun violence is scanning this and filling my name out,
I'm in.
Yeah, it's the least I could do. Right? If you don't want to kill puppies and I get to scan something and that helps the puppies, right? Like that's what I'm talking about. Like this is, you know, and it was frustrating because my people were the ones that were hardest on me for being up there.
Well, I mean, here's the thing is and G-Web says the same thing. The result is positive movement on one side by learning and participating. Results of this side are more confusing, continued arguments based on ignorance. Very, very true. 100% agree. What you took out of that may not have been the message, but the tactics that they use. Because you can say what you want to about the other side. They're well funded. They're relatively well organized. More importantly, their tactics are good. Being able to see their tactics allows us to utilize their tactics, but in a different way. But I mean, can you imagine the next time that you go to something like that and you're the first speaker again and you have this flyer, who wants to end gun violence? Boom, 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 boom. And you've got a QR code that goes to getting rid of red flag laws, supporting hey, we want to end the NFA. We want to get rid of the NFA or whatever. We want to get rid of magazine capacity bans in California. And that's where your QR code goes to. Why can't we utilize that? We can say what we want to about them, but that's brilliant. That was a brilliant move.
The other thing too, so when I got up there to speak, because I was the first one to speak besides the event organizer, right? And the first thing I did is like, I'm from Vegas, and I said, you guys know what happened in Mandalay Bay, October 1, right? I said 59 people died that night, including the shooter. And I said, that's a lot, right? I said, but we lose 67 people a day to suicide by firearm. I told the crowd that, right? So I brought it back to suicide. Stop acting like Mandalay Bay is the issue.
It's the problem,
right? And that was the perfect, to me. Then everybody that came after me couldn't start bullshitting, like they had to address suicide. And it's funny because they wrote an article about it, and I have the article. It was from the San Jose Mercury or something like that, and it basically says, like, the lady from Mom's Demand, she's like, I'm glad Sedini was here because he brought the conversation back to suicide, and that's never talked about. So she actually admitted it.
That's a positive. I mean, it's a step in a direction. It might not be the right, but it's a step away from their propaganda speech, stump speech. That's a positive thing. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, once again, it's like, at least I got to say in front of these kids, like, hey, legislation isn't going to stop any of this. You have to go for root cause mitigation. You have to find solutions. It's regardless of the person's taking their own life or snapping and doing something horrific. There's something that could have gotten in their way, right? We're not saying we can stop it.
Absolutely.
Right. So give them the opportunity, especially if they're really into guns, to say, like, I don't have to really do. It's crazy we talk about like crisis. I mean, Clover and I have had this conversation. It's like, when you go into crisis, you're not even thinking. You know how many times like people are in crisis and you're like, hey, just Google that. And they're like, I didn't even think to do that. Right? Like, make it as easy as possible for people to figure out how to get help or where to start. That's number one.
And I'll let Clover come in here in a second, but how do I put this? Where you are now, obviously, where you started a few years ago, almost 4 years ago. Is that right? Almost 4 years ago?
Come up on 4.
Holy cow. That's crazy. Almost 4 years ago, what you guys have done is amazing. And I tell you this all the time. I don't think that you understand the impact as much as we from the outside looking in, because it's a grind. You're always grinding. You're always looking for this, that, and the other. I don't think that we see the impact that Walk the Talk America is having in our industry and our community more probably than you do. Okay. So let's preface by saying that, but knowing now what you know and where you're going, do you want Walk the Talk America to be that Google for the gun community about mental health? I mean, do you want that to be, or what I'll put this, God, I don't want to ask 17 questions in one because Clover make fun of me. Have you shifted your goals and your wants out of what Walk the Talk America, what you want to become now versus when it started? Has it shifted at all?
Yeah, it shifts all the time. It depends on what is happening, right? So like now I'm getting roped into more positive legislation for the gun industry, if that makes any sense, right? Because once again, it's a thing that we say, like we hear legislation and we're automatically like, whoa, whoa, whoa. But there is legislation that makes sense for gun owners. And that comes in the form of like getting sales tax removed from safes.
Absolutely.
Right? Like encouraging more people to make it more affordable so people can buy safes. Now I get it. You're going to have listeners that are like, I don't need a safe, but some people do. Right. And some people have kids running around and, whatever. But there's also other legislation that we can chip away at, which is like the transfer laws that have no good Samaritan clause in them. Right.
Sure.
So we're not going to be able to get rid of these laws. They're here to stay most likely, but we could also now start fixing them. Because it's ridiculous that in the state of Nevada where I'm at, I can't give you or Clover my firearm if I'm in crisis and you walk out the door. We've committed a crime. Sure. It makes zero sense. It doesn't even make sense.
Absolutely.
To the mental health side of things. Is only when I bring that up to the mental health community, they're blown away that there's no good Samaritan clause. It's because they never thought about it, right? So like that's where, for people outside of the gun industry, I want Walk Talk America to almost be an information center. It's like I can call this guy and I can get the information I need and I can see where my view of things may have been problematic. Now, as far as for the gun industry, I would love for Walk Talk America to be that Google, but what more that I want of it is to inspire gun owners to be like, they can't take that away from me either. Like I can talk about mental health and I can be proactive about mental health. Right.
Because I think a lot of the discussion for the average person that's the gun owner that is 2A aware, not saying a 2A, activist or even, someone but they're 2A aware. Even talking about mental health, they feel, oh, I don't want anyone to hear me mention mental health or mental illness because they might think that I have a mental disease or whatever. First of all, no, shut up. And two, if you do, what's wrong with that?
Right.
I mean, you're once again, you're vilifying the people that actually are, but what's wrong with, I mean, you can't help having a break or a crisis. It just happens. So we're still in our own community vilifying people because I think I heard you or Sarah on another podcast last week, and they said, I hate the word crazy. Like people think because you hear mental health that means you're crazy. Mm-hmm. And the term crazy has a lot of different tentacles out there that are far reaching that are not good. But it's just one of those things where the words that we use, they don't mean what a lot of people think they mean. And like you said, we should be able to have a discussion within our own community about mental illness, just like it's a common cold.
Right.
We shouldn't be embarrassed. We shouldn't be scared. We shouldn't be any of these things to have this discussion, because right now, and I think it's changing, but yeah, at one point that was, hey, don't even acknowledge that elephant in the room. Don't even acknowledge it, because if we acknowledge it, it's true. Well, what if it is true? What's wrong with it being true? 2/3 of all firearm deaths are by suicide. 50% of all deaths in America suicide are caused by firearms.
Right.
So it's like, okay, these are the facts. And the quicker that our community and our industry absorb that and own it and not allow them to use it against us, I don't think people understand that it turns the tide in our direction, because they can't use it anymore.
Right. It's a mental jujitsu, if you will, right?
Absolutely.
It's like 8 Mile. When Eminem said, this guy's going to say all these things about me, so I'm going to take it away from him.
What else you got? Yeah.
Right. You have nothing. And it's not like we're just saying, it's not our problem. We're actually providing solutions, like the things that we do, the training of the mental health clinicians, the screenings, the work that we do when organizations, I don't even know how to phrase this, but like when organizations are about to back a stupid bill, like I love getting the phone call from said organization, right? If people at Mental Health America need to understand why they shouldn't back something that's being proposed to them, I need to get that call. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
You know, it's really not, it's not rocket science. It's literally just about being better, man. It's nothing wrong with being a socially conscious 2A.
Being better and being willing to have the tough conversation. Because what they say, the first step to the first step to healing is admitting you have a problem. The industry and our community need to we know the problem. We need to acknowledge the problem and move on with the problem and help, like you said, help solve. Is it going to be solved? I would love to sit there and say one day there will not be any suicides, period, whether by firearm or anything else. We know that's just not the case. But if we can give people an idea of how they can deal with it, I tell people every week when I start the show, you're not alone. There are people out there that are able and willing to help. The hardest thing we've got to give is not only the community and the industry to acknowledge it and start the step forward to helping find the cause or the root cause mitigation, but the problems, the solutions, more importantly, just be willing to have that open conversation, because let people decide what their own solutions are. But if no one's having the conversation, you're not planting that seed with anyone. And I think that you have in the short few years, you have gone into the industry. If you would have told me, if I would have told you 4 years ago, then within 4 years, a major ammo manufacturer, a major manufacturer and importer in America was going to put your company's website and slogan on every single ammo box, that's a major win. You probably would have thought, there's no way that happens in 4 years. Maybe you did, I don't know, but for me, that's a huge deal, because that might be the stone that turns the tide.
Yeah, we got to please our own, and I think that's a first start, right? Like just think about that. Like no one could get that done except for ourselves, right? Like we are the only ones that can do that, unless the government wanted to come down and say like you have to. But that's a mandate, which we're going to avoid.
Mandates are not good.
Yeah, if we do it first.
Either way, it's not good.
Yeah, it just needs to stay within our own community. You know what I mean? Like there's not any other walk of life where if someone said we're handling it ourselves, right? Like we're handling it ourselves, like people would even have an issue with that. So we should do that too. Like let's handle it ourselves. And quite frankly, if you don't understand it, you don't get it, we'll go battle that shit out in court, man. Like that's what that shit's
stay out of that fight. There are other people that do understand it and are willing to fight that fight. Just because you agree doesn't mean that you need to be involved in the fight. But what you don't need to be is be against the fight.
We've come a long way, man. Like as down as I can get on it sometimes, it's just like there's a lot of, like I said, I got an optic company, Bison, out there, like they're putting in the flyers, like people get it and they understand it. And if we just kind of like unify towards it, we have a spot at the table, because we once again can provide the places that they can't get to. Even the VA, man, like I had those conversations with the VA, and the VA was just like, yeah, we can't attend SHOT Show like that, because of their red tape. We don't have tape. Like, we can just go get things done,
100%.
Yeah. So,
Clove, come on, jump in here. You've been, like I said, surprisingly quiet, and I know that you've had a discussion with Mike on your podcast, and you're allowing us to have our discussion. That's great, but I'm sure that there's stuff that we need to bring up that I might have forgotten to bring up, or something that you remember and you wanted to bring up. So go for it.
No, I mean, I honestly can't think of anything. We've covered a lot of ground. I do know that, I've said it a bunch of times, but I don't know that Walk the Talk America is where it is without Mike. And so I don't think a lot of people understand that. I don't think that he necessarily gets a lot of credit. If I was going to ask something, I would think, so running Eagle Imports has the ability to delegate, to utilize resources, to identify resources that can be used. Has that helped you? because it seems like it has. That's why I say I think you're the guy that the only guy that could have made this happen the way that it did. And I'm wondering if, since I think that, if it's because of some of the way you did business or whatever with Eagle kind of played into your ability to recognize different avenues and who to tap for those avenues and in navigating Walk the Talk America forward.
Yeah, well, my relationships from Eagle is really what made Walk the Talk successful out of the chute. I don't think, I think it needed to have a board and some leadership that had.
And you've got one hell of a board, by the way.
Yeah, I was really lucky there because I had relationships with guys like Coley and Noir and Kenyon Gleason, who's the president of NASUW, and John Renzulli, who's a lawyer for Glock. So I had these built-in relationships that people could at least say, like, okay, if he screws up, he's screwing up his livelihood. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and that helped, right? Because I like even somebody like Collins, Coley Noir, like I've just got.
Did you just say the worst secret in the gun industry? But yeah. His name's not Coley on Noir. Really?
Come on, not Cologne. No, he has gotten me. Just his name alone has gotten me some of these meetings, right? But
absolutely.
I've had to. You have to. I don't think there's a Walk to Talk America if there's no Eagle imports. I mean, just plain and simple. That's it. You know what I mean?
Well, you talk about, and Clover talked about it from the business side of things. You're talking about it from the relation side of things. I'm going to talk about it. I think that you, in your background, brought validity right out of the gate for Walk the Talk. It wasn't like me and Clover started this, who are nobodies that no one knows who the hell they are, and we're starting this thing that no one's like, whatever. You brought immediate validity to the cause because of your background, who you are, all of that, your business sense, your relationships, all that combined. But you never had to walk into a room with an industry and say, hi, my name is Mike. I've been doing this, blah, blah, blah. Here's my background. They knew you.
Yeah.
You walked into a meeting and they're like, oh shit. Like, that dude owned Eagle Imports. I mean, like, you brought validity to it out of the gate, and that probably helped as well.
Yeah, it definitely helped, and my family's reputation and really helped. Go back to the nepotism thing, like just like my uncle, who he was, my grandfather. At one point, my grandfather had run Savage. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Savage, but he was the president of Savage. So there was a lot of things that went my way, and this wasn't just hard work. This was like literally getting the support of people and all these things that happened, like the luck of how I was received with Mental Health America, right? Like that was just
that changes things if it goes the wrong way,
right? Yeah,
you don't get that opportunity again with them,
No, and that's just I think some stars fell in place, but once again, like, what are we doing? Like, there was really nowhere to go except for this standstill of kind of sitting at the opposite side of the table and being like, it's your fault. No, it's your fault.
Right.
Like, this is not our, we all know it's not the gun. The gun is the tool. Like, that's it. Right. And these are the things that I'm able to, that's one of the cool things about, when I get to challenge people with their ideation about things like, their ideology of things like red flag laws and stuff like that. I'm like, yeah, you come and take people's guns, but you don't really care about the person. And they're like, no, that's what it is. It's to prevent something tragic. I'm like, but you don't.
What they don't know is what if you are found to be not mentally incapable?
Right.
Are you going to support my way of getting my guns back?
Right. And they don't care, though. They don't take anything else. They don't take the rope out of the house. They don't take the knives out of the house. They don't they don't drain the pool.
They don't drain your gasoline and make sure that the garage door can't close. They don't do any of that stuff.
Yeah, they don't care about any of that.
I had a friend die is close the garage door and went to sleep. You never hear anyone talking about that.
No, right? That's how I lost an ex-girlfriend of mine. She did the exact same thing, right? And that's one of the things that I think is really important. And once again, it brings the importance of having this and coming to the table, because you can't make those arguments and unless you're shouting at a town hall, you really can't. And unless you have to be embedded in it, you have to be there at the table. You have to get the invites, which Walk to Talk America does. I'm on the governor's challenge. I'm on the mayor's challenge, in numerous states. Those are the things that like we need to work towards this thing.
Well, we don't have, we don't have an avenue, and maybe some people out there do. And if you do, start your own cause,
Or
right?
get
If
into
you're
it
a
with Mike and
contractor,
help him with your avenue. You know?
whatever, right? I mean, if you're into ropes or garages or knives
Right.
or medications or something, right? I mean, and you want to start the, stop suicide from that angle, by all means do it. But, people get hung up a lot of times on the gun is the tool. You're right. We know that. But again, we can't overlook that it's a quick, easy, effective way to get the job done, right? And so knowing that, we have to have solutions, we have to present solutions, we have to be proactive. And if we take that approach to try to lower the number of suicide by firearm, what other industries could potentially, or people in those industries, right, come forward and go, hey, look what the firearm community did. I wonder if Big Rope or Big Garage or whoever, I wonder if we could do the same thing. I wonder if we could
And then the
champion that cause.
alliances between all those different communities, the alliances
100%.
to say we can now join forces and really combat this with different resources that all of those groups have. I mean, that's probably the great thing. I mean, that's a great pipe dream, but why can't it happen? Absolutely.
Yeah, we don't want to be we don't want to be the cigarette the tobacco industry. It's better to
let them do that. Yeah. Man, I didn't realize just 2 hours into this, and I don't want to keep you any longer than we have to. Real quick before I start letting you talk about where they can find you and all of that, here's the real simple kind of, I mean, it's not a simple, but the question that may be a simple one, but in your mind, what's the end game? As you see it right now, what's the end game?
Oh, the end game, I guess for see, once again, because I always break everything up, right? It's like the end game for
it changes every week. You know?
The other side and the end game for the firearms community. The end game for me, the big one is, I said this earlier in the show, get the gun industry where the alcohol industry got with DUIs. There you go.
Absolutely. 100%. Clove, you got anything else before we let Mike talk a little bit about where they can find them?
Nah, I'm good.
Okay. So, Mike, I want to kind of go, and I'm going to be putting links out there to the social media. First of all the links, including social media links, are in the description below. You go to walkthetalkamerica.org or WTTA.org. You're going to be able to find all those social media links, the podcasts and everything. But I want people to, where can they find you if they're on Instagram or Facebook or YouTube or whatever, and they want to follow you on those specific platforms? Where can they find you, and how can they get a hold of you or someone with the organization if they need to?
So if you just want to contact Walk Talk America, it's at Walk the Talk US. That's on all the platforms, at Walk the Talk US. And then if you just want to get a hold of me, my Instagram, probably the best way, is at Michael_Sedini. It's also the same on Facebook and I think on Twitter as well. So we're pretty responsive. Somebody will get to you. So any of those places you want to find me at. For WTTA, it's at Walk the Talk US. And it's kind of cool if you go on there, you can see kind of like almost a 4-year history. A lot of our success has been on there and the things that we've accomplished and stuff like that. So, definitely reach out if you have any questions or you need something or you have an idea or there's a way that you feel like you can help, like we'll take it, not too proud to beg for help and money.
Absolutely. Yeah. No. Well, I mean, that's what we, and that's the thing is I don't think people understand in general how a 501c happens. You have to give up a lot on a hope that it works. Yeah. And you've given up, and not that you're not complaining. I've never known you to complain about anything where you have absolutely every right to complain about how things don't always work out the way you think, at least as quickly, or this, that, and the other. I've never known you to complain about anything because you have a passion for Walk the Talk America. But I don't think people really understand the grind, the hours I'll put it to you this way. I made up, and we laugh about it, but I said something to you that it shot that it came out wrong. But I said, man, you look terrible. And you're like, oh, well, fuck you, thanks. And you knew what I meant. But I had never seen you like looking that just tired. And I know that you've been working your ass off and you probably need some help, and all of that. But I had never seen you physically look that tired. And I was like, he's busting his ass. And I don't think people understand. It's kind of like the duck in the water. On top of the water, the duck looks real serene and peaceful. Underneath, those legs are just going 90 miles an hour. And that's probably how it is, because you always put the look on, hey, we're good. We're working. It's all it is. But I know it's got to be just an absolute grind for you, your family, your friends. This is going to consume a lot of your time, is it not?
Yeah. I mean, it takes up, I didn't get paid for this until year 2.5. Like the 2.5 year mark is when I first was able to take a salary. And I went from a salary, it's a joke. Like my salary, just to show you what I did, my salary didn't cover my rent. Right. Now, my salary.
You go from owning an import company to,
right.
Technically, if you didn't have the previous life, you wouldn't be able to pay rent.
Right. It provided me the opportunity to do what I really love, which is this, right? I really enjoy this. But people need to understand, one of the reasons why I look so beat up at SHOT Show too is because, like, when I have these meetings and people are like, hey, we're really interested in donating. We want to see your 3, 5 to 10 year plan. Where's our money going? And I wanted to be like, fuck you. Look, the money. Let's go backwards. Right. Look what I did without asking you for money. You know what I mean? Like, and I get it. You need these things and it's stuff like that. But sometimes you come out of these meetings, you're a little deflated because you're like, damn, they just moved the goalpost on something that I don't even have time for right now. Like, I don't need you to take like 10 years. You know what I mean? Down.
Absolutely. G23. First of all, we don't ask nor do we encourage super chats, but we do thank you. We send all of those to send care packages to our troops downrange. G23 says $100. Split this between WTTA and our servicemen and women who are downrange. So I will be sending a donation to Mike in G23's name for $50. So thank you, brother. I appreciate it. Man, you know what? I'm going to send all 100 of it to it. We're good. All $100 of that's going to go to you guys. And I know in the grand scheme of things, $100, but every $100 helps when you're talking about fighting this fight.
Yeah, dude, let me tell you something. Like, $100 is a big deal, and I'll tell you why.
It is a big deal.
We send out these care packages to gun shops that have the mental health flyer, right? And sometimes bands and everything like that. Every time I send one of those packages, because of the weight, it's $20-something, right? So we're talking about, like, you may have just paid for, you have, right? Like 5 of these to go out to gun shops, right? Mm-hmm. Like, there's a lot of like expense that seems really silly, but it nickel and dimes the organization so much. Yep. So that's a living example of where that goes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So out there, and the reason why I send that is a lot of people sit there and say, well, I've only got $5. I can only, donate $5 or whatever. That's the thing. Don't think that your $5 isn't helping. Your $5 and you get 20 other people to do $5. Oh, there's $100. And then you get 20 other people to do $100. Every cent helps. So $100 for G23. Thank you. I'm going to send 100% of that to Mike. So I'll be making that donation online. If you want to, if people do want to donate to the cause, how can they do that? Where can they find a place to donate?
They can just go to WTTA.org. Yeah, they can go to WTTA.org. And like I said, everybody that has done this, I do have a salary now. It's a very humble salary. I promise you that. It is very small compared to what I'm used to making. I know that doesn't mean shit to you, but like
Right.
We don't have any high salaried employees. No, like I am the only paid employee. Everybody else,
you're the employee.
yeah, I'm the employee. And I had to do that because I just eventually had to make a living from some of this. But everybody else that does this, the Jake Wiskersons, the Rob Pinkuses, the Jay Hoods, you guys met Jay at SHOT Show.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everybody there donates their time. So all of our expenses and everything like that. One of the cool things about the organization is our biggest donor is also the person that I let run our books, right? So Dustin Jones from Arms Corp,
Yeah.
they have everything, right? So they donate the most, and they also offered to handle that for me. So I promise
100%.
you, yeah, like it's out of my hands. Yeah,
please.
Yeah. It truly is. And I love telling Dustin that because I'm like, how good am I? Like, I don't even spend any money on nothing. You know what I mean? Because I'm always trying to call people and get them to donate whatever it is, whether it's printing or anything like that. Oh, that's another way. If anybody knows any printers that might want to step up, we're always looking for people to make the cards for us and little things like that. Like, think outside of the box. But yeah, one of the things I'm proud of is just the fact that like I let the penny pinching be like somebody else to monitor that. Like
Absolutely.
It makes me feel good because I'm real big on that now. Like everything I do when people ask for money for donations, because I'm like, I really want to know where that money goes. So like, to me, at least I know like I'm giving 100% to what we do,
100%. Absolutely. Yeah. It's awesome. Real quick before I have my closing thoughts, Clove, thanks for joining in. And I know that, you enjoy this conversation as much as I do. So any closing thoughts on all that, go for it.
Just thanks to Mike for coming on. Thanks for everything he does. We got your back, so holler if you need anything.
Yep.
Yeah. Dude, thank you guys, by the way. You know that. I love you.
I've got mental health conversation tonight. Tomorrow is physical health. I've got my medic on the podcast, which should be fun. And then
Chase also has to do with mental health, because if you're physically healthy, then you're going to be mentally healthy. Probably.
Well, this is true, but that's usually trauma, accidents and things like that. But and then Chase with the EAA, which coincidentally was the video drop for the day, the Gerson MC 1911 S10 10 millimeter. That video dropped today, and we've got Chase with the EAA, who of course imports Gerson, Thursday. So should be a pretty good week.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for coming on, bro. I really appreciate you just kind of along this ride, this journey with me and all that. Always riding shotgun and all that. Appreciate you. As far as Walk the Talk America, I'll put links out there. They're in the description, whether you're watching this in replay, you're listening to it on podcast form, in the description and all that. If you are not watching this live, if you're watching this replay or listening to this in podcast form or whatever platform you are on, if you have comments, you have questions, if you have something that needs to get a hold to Mike and you can't find where to contact him, utilize the comment section. I will make sure that any comments or questions that need to get to Clover or Mike will get there and answered and all of that. More importantly, we say this all the time. Please don't let this discussion and this conversation stop at this live stream. We say that every week about this. If you're ever going to take that and do something with it, this conversation, this topic, this is the one that needs to continue. Whether it's at your local gun shop, at your local range, or with a state representative, your mayor, the governor, whatever, whoever, an anti-gun person, whoever will listen. This conversation, I'm sorry, my dog sees a deer in the front yard, but she thinks that they're friends, but they're not. But this conversation needs to be the one that continues. We know we want to talk about legislation and all of that stuff. What Mike is doing is bringing the 2A community to this discussion, but this discussion is so much bigger than 2A. So please put your politics aside when you're talking about suicide and mental health and mental illness, because it is much bigger than the 2A. The 2A is a part of this, and we're glad that Mike has brought the 2A to the discussion. but this conversation is a huge one all over the world. And this conversation needs to be had wherever and whenever you can. Please be on the lookout of any family, friends, loved ones, people that you know at work, whoever it is that have a change in personality, have a change in whatever. There could be something going on that they don't even know about. They may not even realize that they're having problems. Address it. Make them feel comfortable. Make sure that they know that they have someone they can talk to. They have someone that they can bounce ideas off. And by the way, if you need to, you can help them get help as well. Please don't let this conversation end. This is a big one, not just in our gun and our two-way gun-loving community and industry. This is a worldwide, we talk pandemics. This is a worldwide epidemic of mass proportions. Suicide's a real thing all over the world. Let's help combat mental illness, especially in the gun community. Thank you to Clover. Thank you to Mike, especially to Mike. Thank you for what you're doing. You know, we got your back. We can't offer a lot, but we can give you a platform and we can help you in any way. If you need help doing anything, you know that we're always here to help in any way possible. But thank you for doing what you're doing. Go support them in any way possible, whether it's printing out flyers and taking them to your local gun shop, buying bracelets, buying whatever, donating. I put a link out there to help support through donation. G23 Mike says he wants to get you on one of his panels one of these days. I'll make sure that if you're not connected with G23, we'll make sure you guys get connected and all of that. Contact him if you can't find him through any of the ways he's talked about. Get a hold of me, G23, and I'll connect you guys if you need to, or Clover can as well. But yeah, any way that you can get Mike out there to get to ears, because the story is real, his passion is real, the organization is as good as it gets. So thank you so much for Mike. Thank you, everyone. G23, freaking rock star. Thank you so much for the super chat. Really do appreciate it. Guys, we will see you next week. Semper Fi.